Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Cooking for Cancer with the Happy Kitchen class. We're very excited to be hosting this class today. I wanted to let everyone online and everyone attending in person to know that we will be having question and answers at the end. I will be letting our facilitators introduce themselves, and we also will have a survey to hand out. So a paper survey for all you attending in person, as well as an online survey for all of you attending on our chat today. Briefly, before we get started in the class and topic that you all have come to learn more about, we wanted to remind you of the services that the LiveStrong Foundation provides. We have our navigation services where we provide free support for anyone affected by cancer. We have emotional support counselors that help with anything related to emotional support and connecting to support groups. We have partnerships with different organizations that also help us with any questions you might have about finance or insurance, as well as any questions about the diagnosis or how to seek second opinions, as well as peer-to-peer matching. So you can always reach us on our website, livestrong.org/wecanhelp. You can email us at cancer.navigation@livestrong.org or give us a call at 855-220-7777. So I'll let the facilitators take it away now, but please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So I'm Katie Levitt. I'm a nutritionist with the Happy Kitchen, which is the cooking and nutrition education program of Sustainable Food Center. Sustainable Food Center, for you guys who don't know, is a local nonprofit here in Austin. We improve access to nutritious, affordable food. So what does that mean? Our motto is grow, share, prepare. So we're really a seed-to-table organization. We help people grow food. We help the people who grow it share it in the community. And then once you have that nutritious food, we teach people how to prepare it. Because it's not healthy until you swallow, right? Just having great intentions and buying kale and letting it rot in your fridge doesn't help much. So we're going to show you what to do with it today. So that's who I am and where we are here from. And I'm going to let Ann and Candace introduce themselves. They are two of our trained facilitators with the Happy Kitchen.
Hi everybody, it's a pleasure to be at LiveStrong again because we've actually, Ann and I, facilitated a number of cooking classes here. I've been with the Sustainable Food Center since about 2010, and I love learning more about food every day. I learn a lot from the people that take the classes, but also eating fresh and whole. The healing art of food is incredibly important, and I'm happy to be sharing what little we know with you today, and hope that it expands your life from whatever stage you're starting at.
Hi, my name is Ann Winkler, and I was trained by the Happy Kitchen 8 years ago, and I taught my first cancer survivor class, cooking class series, starting in 2009. But my personal journey with cancer started with my father being diagnosed with lung cancer, and in 2010. And I did a tremendous amount of studying about food, the food cancer connection, and that's kind of what's brought me here.
And just before we start teaching in full here, I just wanted to make sure you guys know we have done our homework, we've done our research, but we are not doctors. And so if you have questions about anything we say today, just please talk it over with your healthcare provider, and certainly feel free to ask us any questions as well. We'll do our best to answer whatever questions you have. And with that, Ann's going to get us started.
Okay. Did you all pick up some handouts? You don't have any handouts?
I think maybe we didn't put them out. I'll do that while you...
Okay. I was going to say, look at the handout. Today we're going to cover 4 basic elements of a cancer-fighting diet. And when she gets the handouts, it's going to look like this. We're trying to make it really simple. And there are 4 components: blood sugar control, digestion, nutrient density, and cellular inflammation. So let's talk about, what each of these elements are and why they're important. I'll give you a second to get the handouts. So the first element is the blood sugar control. So what is that? It's the amount of glucose or sugar that's in your blood, and that's what gives our cells energy. Having uncontrolled blood sugar can increase your risk of many diseases, including diabetes and some kinds of cancer. For good health, it's important to keep your blood sugar balanced. If you turn to guess we'll do that in a minute. Well, we'll do that in a minute. The digestion. Basically, digestion is your body's process of breaking down food so that nutrients can be used by your body. And that's important because the easier it is to digest the food, the more nutrition your body's going to get from it. Nutrient density, what is it? The amount of nutrients in a given portion of food, say a half a cup of food. Nutrient-dense foods are high in vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients, and also very low in calories. That's important because eating nutrient-dense foods is better for you than eating low-density foods such as white bread, white rice, pretzels. And then cellular inflammation. Have you all heard about cellular inflammation? Okay, inflammation of the cells it's inflammation of your cells in your body, and it's the root cause of many diseases, including many of the cancers. And it's important because eating a diet that focuses on fresh food or whole foods, like we're showing up here, like fresh fruits and vegetables, can help you reduce inflammation. And this reduces your risk of recurrence and helps you recover.
And so one of the ground rules we'd like everybody to know is eating real food. And what does that mean? Well, this is real food. But basically, if you have to unwrap it, if you have to open a box, if you have to try to tear open that shrink-wrapped cellophane on something, it's not real food. And we're here also we have, we're going to be cooking with these wonderful foods today that are going to follow along with the categories that Anne just mentioned to you. So another example, for example, of something that isn't real food is an apple. Absolutely. An apple is fresh. There's no preservatives in it, supposedly. But it comes pretty close to nature. Applesauce, next generation, right? It's still pretty pure to the element. It's been bottled or canned, but it's still, except for some additives, it's still pretty pure. But Apple Jacks, the cereal, hit the road. Doesn't work. And then we also use what is called the happy plate. You'll find this in this colorful graphic, and you'll notice this is really different than the food pyramid that we are all brought up with, or some of us are brought up with, which had a basis of meat, if you remember, and it sort of like went up. And then I think fruits and vegetables were like a little top of the pyramid. But look at this. Half of the plate is fruits and vegetables. That's the way to health. Fruits and vegetables, and more vegetables than fruit, if you can manage it. And you see that a quarter of it is grains. And it's not only rice and potatoes, but there's breads there, oats, quinoa, which we're also going to be serving today, and brown rice. And then for protein, you don't see a big hunk of steak there anymore. You see that other options are beyond regular meats. There's cheeses, eggs, tuna, salmon we'll be cooking with today, and wonderful protein boosters such as tofu. So we invite you to really enjoy the recipes. We look forward to cooking them. And Katie's next.
So one of the, as Candace said, the most important thing you can do, if you only have one takeaway from this whole class, that is eat more fruits and vegetables. And really, to fight cancer, you want to aim for 8 to 10 servings a day. And that sounds like a lot, but when you think about it, a serving is really only half a cup. So this is a half a cup of broccoli, right? When you eat broccoli on your plate, you probably eat 2 or 3 servings. You're going to eat more than this. So you're definitely getting more than 1 serving per meal, especially if your plate looks like what Candace just said, right? If you have half of your plates as fruits and vegetables. So how many of you guys, your plate looked like this last night at dinner? Anybody? Somebody? A couple people? And so that's really what we're aiming for. When you look at your plate, half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables, and like she said, more vegetables than fruits. So we're going to show you some ways that you can do this. If that's totally different than what you're used to, if you're used to having a big piece of protein in the middle of your plate and that pushes all the fruits and vegetables off the plate and you don't really end up eating those at all, we're going to show you how to do it. So you should have a handout that says a day of meals. And this is just a couple of options that we've put together. Some examples, ways that you could get these 8 fruits and vegetables a day. So here's some examples. For breakfast, instead of having a bowl of cereal, which as Candace mentioned isn't really food, right? You have to open a box to get to it. You have a smoothie. You can put, I had a smoothie this morning for breakfast. It probably had 3 servings of fruits and vegetables in it. Very, very easy. And we'll talk a little bit more later about why smoothies are a good choice. We're here in Texas, so breakfast tacos are a big thing here. Some people watching online might think that's weird, but everyone in this room knows what I'm talking about. So have a breakfast taco. A corn tortilla is a whole grain. Put some eggs, some beans, sauteed vegetables, some avocado. Salsa counts as a vegetable. That's a really good option. So in this example for lunch, lemon mustard salmon salad is one of the recipes we're going to make today. We're going to show you guys how easy that is. And you can read through this. We're also going to show you guys about gazpacho, talk a little bit more about that. And we're going to make the beans and greens from dinner under option 1, and the sweet potato wraps, dinner option 2. So obviously there's a million different ways that you could put together your day's worth of meals to get in your 8 to 10 fruits and vegetables. But we just wanted to give you a couple of examples how you can do it and not eat weird rabbit food, not feel like you can't eat with your friends, that you're not eating what everybody else is eating. It's totally normal food. It's just a lot of fruits and vegetables. So now, let's see. We're going to start in just a minute making the beans and greens. And a couple things we wanted to talk about. One is that we're definitely advocating cooking for yourself as much as you can. That being said, if you're not feeling well, if you live by yourself, if you don't have someone helping you out, you may just not be able to cook everything for yourself. And there are some things that are more important to cook for yourself and some things that are really fine to buy already prepared at the store. So for example, I found some organic free-range chicken broth. It's low sodium, feel good about that. If I don't have time to make my own broth at home, I'm going to buy that instead. However, I'm not really going to buy any prepared soups because soup that you buy in a can has a lot of sodium in it. So that's something that I'm going to make for myself. I'm going to ask my friends when they say, what can I do to help? I'm going to say, hey, could you make a big pot of soup and bring it over? That's the kind of thing that you want to make for yourself or have someone make for you.
I just want to tell everybody what I'm going to start to do because we need to get rolling here. We got a bunch of really great recipes. So here, chopped garlic, and it smells wonderful, and jalapeno, and there's olive oil already heating here. So I'm just going to start sautéing in the olive oil, the wonderful garlic and the jalapenos. And the garlic. Did we get the garlic at the at one of the kitchen or one of the?
Yeah, the farmers market. So a lot of the produce that we bought here today is from the SFC Farmers Market downtown. Hopefully people who are watching online have good access to local seasonal vegetables as well. But here in Austin we have lots and lots of great options.
And now I'm going to add the onions, and you can, I'm sure, smell that starting to you can get the wonderful aroma of those really healthy. Garlic is really a great cleanser in some cases, and jalapeno spice is great. Also, spices can be very healing and also promote digestion.
And in just a second, Anne's going to talk a little bit more about blood sugar. But one word about that before she gets started is you'll notice in all the meals that we have in our day of meals, you'll notice that there's protein in every meal, there's grains or some kind of starch in every meal, lots of fruits and vegetables, and that all those together is going to really help balance your blood sugar. And that's one of the things that's very important when you're trying to combat cancer. And like I said, Anne's going to talk a little bit more about that. But this recipe is a really good example of that. We've got the greens, we've got tomatoes as our vegetables, a lot of onions and herbs. We've got, we're using turkey sausage today, so it's lower in fat, and we were really careful when you're trying to combat cancer, you want to be really careful about the kind of meat that you buy. We'll talk more about that as well. And then we're using beans for protein as well. So this is, the recipe says it feeds, I think it's 6 or 8, you guys have the recipe there, but it only calls for a ½ pound of meat. So it's really less than 2 ounces of meat per person. So it's not a full serving, but for people who feel like it's not dinner if it doesn't have meat in it, this is a great option. The meat flavors the meal, but really most of the protein, or at least half the protein, is coming from plant sources. You don't have the recipes? Okay, we'll get you the recipes. And if you want to talk about.
You have a handout that is called Blood Sugar Basics. And as I said earlier, one of the 4 basic elements of a cancer-fighting diet is controlling your blood sugar. And I'm going to try to explain it in 2 different ways, but we're going to start by looking at this graph. The key is to have your blood sugar balanced. That's the key, and that's your goal. And things that can make it unbalanced are If you look at the red line, you see you've got highs and lows of your blood sugar throughout the day. So an example of this would be in the morning having a donut, and so your blood sugar rises quickly and then crashes. Have you ever had that experience where it crashes and you're just sort of don't have any energy? That's a classic example, I think, of blood sugar spikes, and it's the first thing in the morning. The other thing is sugary drinks like sodas. A lot of your sports drinks have a lot of sugar in them, and your refined grains and processed foods like white bread, white rice, pasta, all your processed food that, it comes packaged, as Candace pointed out. The green line is foods that help stabilize your blood sugar. They're trying to balance it, and with the balancing, you're also feeling full and satisfied when you eat the foods. These foods would include such things as high fiber foods like your fruit and vegetables we've talked about, whole grains, brown rice, wild rice, things that have the whole, germ to them, foods that have healthy fats and proteins in them, and that will help you stabilize. And so as you eat these foods, your blood sugar slowly rises to meet that balanced level. It's a slow rise. So that's all how you're going to balance your blood sugar. The other thing, let me explain it another way, how to control your blood sugar. I'm going to give you a visual in helping to understand how to balance it. Think about a campfire. I don't know if any of you are Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, but a campfire starts with 3 elements. One is a large log, which burns slowly and for a long time, so it keeps everything else going all night long if you want your fire to burn all night long. And that part of the component we look at is the fats part of your campfire. Now, fats you don't eat a lot of during the day, but it's a slow burn that keeps everything else going. Fats help you stabilize your blood sugar. They make you feel satisfied after you've had a meal, and they help control your appetite so you don't have cravings. An example of some good fats would be no more than 2 tablespoons of nuts, which isn't very much. Probably have a tablespoon somewhere. Half an avocado. We don't have an avocado. And just 1 tablespoon of olive oil with every meal. That's all you need, and that's what's going to give you that long, slow burn, and that's really basic to starting your campfire or starting your controlling and balancing your blood sugar. The second element is protein. And think about that. So you've got your log, and then you've got it's like a teepee that you're building up, and that provides the structure to support the fire. And protein is the building block of all of your cells. It helps you repair and heal the body, which is very important. Reduces your cravings for carbohydrates like pretzels and all that snack food that we just never get satisfied with. And again, you get satisfaction, you feel full and satisfied after a meal. You're not hungry 10 minutes later or 15 minutes later. And then you have carbohydrates. Those are those quick burning fuel, and that's like kindling to a fire. So all that small little kindling and that you put on a fire to get it started, that's the carbohydrates of your meal. So high fiber carbohydrates would be things like your whole grains, which are quinoa, if you've all heard of quinoa, wild rice, brown rice, or fruit. And it's a slow burn so that you're feeling satisfied for a longer period of time. Versus refined carbohydrates like cake, donuts, white bread. Those are like throwing leaves and paper on a fire. They burn quickly and then they're out. So that's kind of how we're thinking about how you're satisfied and you balance your blood sugar throughout the day, and you do that with each meal throughout the day and several snacks if you need snacks during the day. Then you're never like starving and wanting to grab those refined carbohydrates. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, we can address the questions later.
So we're going to be using turkey sausage today. Katie's going to be adding it. And this comes from pastured turkeys, different than pasteurized turkeys. This is pastured. And you'll find that if you start cooking with really quality meats that you can get, or quality fish that you can get fresh at farmers markets or at your deli counter, or even, you can see that when we do the class, we talk a lot about the quality of meats, but you'll be able to eat less, you'll be able to digest it better, and it'll taste better. It's remarkable, actually, using a high quality, even bacon, as opposed to the least expensive, which is cut with the most fat. And it's going to make a difference in the way that you feel, particularly around inflammation. And I don't know if you've experienced cellular inflammation. It's different than if you, for example, sprain your wrist or your finger or something. It's momentary pain. There's a lot of heat there. But cellular is a little bit more insidious, and it's actually the root cause of many diseases, including cancer, also diabetes and arthritis. So we do also have a handout in cellular inflammation. So we distinguish the difference between specific one-time inflammation, when you injure yourself and you understand, wow, I twisted my ankle running or whatever you're doing. But ongoing inflammation occurs on your body on a cellular level throughout the entire structure, and again, it's the root cause of a lot of disease. So what causes it actually? Well, low-quality fats, trans fats, for example, too much sugar, or poor quality sugar products like commercial candy bars. Too many calories, too many empty calories. And again, we talked about animal foods that, if it comes mass processed, from some of the more well-known slaughterers throughout the country, you might try getting, and you will pay a little bit more, but buying something that's air chilled, that is range free, that is grass fed, and you can get this information from the labels. Knowledge is power when you read labels, and knowledge is power around food. It makes a difference in how you will feel, particularly around inflammation. So avoiding cellular inflammation, again, skip the trans fats, and we're going to be doing, Katie's going to be talking about that in a little bit. Keeping your blood sugar stable, which Ann just mentioned. Eating less processed and packaged foods. Eating more plant protein and direct plant protein. In other words, everything here. We've got greens and beans and squash. In Texas, we have a really long and beautiful growing season. It's pretty nice. Things start getting a little sparse around August. But up until that time, even now, there's bounty aplenty. And eat more oily fish. We're also going to be doing a recipe that has salmon mustard salad with sardines, right? Is this the one that has sardines? It's not, okay.
No.
We actually had a lunch, and it was the first time that I did sardines, and I just adored them. And you leave the bones in, because that gives you structure. It gives you a lot of calcium and nutrients, and it's wonderful. And eat more healthy fats. And what are healthy fats? Nuts are healthy fats. Seeds are healthy fats, like pumpkin seeds without a heck of a lot of salt on them. Avocados are wonderful, and also nice olive oils. And again, you'll once you start cooking with foods that are that have more quality, you'll notice the difference in how it tastes, and your need for filling up will change. How much food you have to ingest is going to change.
And just to add to that, when Candace was saying that we're cooking from pastured meats, and she's also talking about healthy fats, one thing a lot of people don't know is that when you buy meat that's raised on a farm, that eats grass, that is raised the way it's supposed to be raised, it also has better nutrients. It has a better fat profile. So if you're eating a hamburger that was raised on a farm, that's usually the label will say grass finished is usually what you'll see. It's going to have more omega-3s, it's going to have less saturated fat, it's going to taste amazing, and it's better for you. So it's really, I find that it's better to eat less meat but higher quality meat. So the money that you're going to spend on meat, use less of it and really get your money's worth. You know, put a little bit into a dish and make sure that it's the highest quality that you can afford. I think you're up.
You don't want to add some of this more of the cooking.
I'm sorry?
You don't want to add some more.
Oh, okay. So right now we have our onions are nice and translucent, and the sausage is pretty much cooked through. So what we're going to do is we're going to add, we've got chicken broth.
And this is free-range chicken broth. You've seen these. This goes a long way, by the way. And if I don't use the whole thing, I freeze them into single cups, and then just use them when I need to pop them into, for example, cooking quinoa.
And I actually make my own chicken broth at home. It is surprisingly easy. Whenever you cook with onions or carrots or celery, save the ends that you cut off, save those onion skins, put them in a baggie in your freezer, and then whenever you make chicken, you can put the bones in a pot with all your vegetable trimmings, fill it up with water, turn it on, let it simmer, you know, while you're doing something else, you know, going about your day, and then strain it out, and it's delicious, no sodium. You won't believe how easy it is, and just like Candace said, I freeze it. I use these like canning jars and freeze it in 1 or 2 cup servings, and I just always have some in my freezer. I do it like 3 or 4 times a year, and it lasts me for the whole year. So that's chicken broth. We also have, these are canned tomatoes. Tomatoes are one of those things that, you know, when they're in season, they're delicious, and when they're not in season, why bother? So canned tomatoes, if you buy a low sodium variety, it's really one of those things. You do want to watch out for the BPA in the cans because tomatoes are acidic, but these are from BPA-free cans. Let's see, we're going to add the beans. So these are just canned pinto beans. If you have the energy to soak and cook your own beans, that's great. Typically, I do not. I don't know the night before that I'm going to have beans for dinner. So canned beans are a great option. You do want to make sure you rinse them under running water because that's going to get rid of most of the sodium, which is really the only bad thing in canned beans.
And it actually freshens the beans too. You'll notice that as you spray them off, or and use a colander, you'll notice that they actually change color and they don't have some of that viscous residue that's usually in the can. And you get rid of, like she said, a lot of salts.
Yeah. It's also great to buy low sodium beans if you can find them, but if not, rinsing it really does take care of most of it. And then you can look here how this is 2 bunches of collard greens, but greens cook down a lot. So you'll see when we're done, it doesn't look like as many greens once they've cooked down as it does here in the bowl. So we're going to let this just kind of simmer away while we keep talking and cooking other things. The people who are here in person will get to try it. And people at home, I hope you make it.
By now, you probably all have heard the word trans fats in the news. I mean, now it's a hot topic. I think New York City banned all trans fats in restaurants, and I think some other cities have followed suit in some major cities. Do you all know what a trans fat is? It's kind of confusing, but a trans fat is really something done by the manufacturer. And they do it solely to increase the shelf life of their packaged products. It's only for their benefit. And what it is when it's artificially adding hydrogen to vegetable oil. So it's called hydrogenation. You've heard the word partially hydrogenated oils. That's the key word. It changes liquid oil to a solid fat. And then again, I said it's for the food manufacturer because it's more spreadable. So common examples of trans fat are margarine, vegetable shortening like Crisco, fried fast food, sorry I had that backwards, microwave popcorn. You really need to read the label on microwave popcorn. It's not as healthy as it appears to be. Commercial baked goods like cookies, crackers, pie, cakes, muffins, all those baked items, and potato chips. So why is it harmful to your health? If you've all been to the doctor, they tell you what your LDL and your HDL levels are. But trans fat raises your LDL levels, which leads to artery blockage. And the trans fats will decrease your good cholesterol, which is your HDL, which helps protect you against heart disease. So trans fat will increase your risk of heart disease. And where can I find trans fat on a package? Well, we don't have anything packaged here except for this one. Well, let me see. I mean, we don't have that many labels. We have everything is fresh. But for example, when you're looking at items to read the label, which will empower you if you can learn to read a food label, which we teach in our classes, our 6-week courses, on the back, it's always on the back, it says nutrition facts. And then off to the side, it'll say ingredients. And in there, it'll tell you exactly what's all in here. And often you'll see the word wheat, like in bread, and then partially hydrogenated soybean oil, or partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, or safflower oil. But if it's the word partially hydrogenated, that's the key word. And if it's in the first 3 ingredients, that you definitely do not want, because that's in descending order of volume in the particular product you're buying in a packaged item. So again, the first 3 items, it also could be vegetable shortening, partially hydrogenated vegetable shortening. If there is trans fats in the packaged product, they must indicate it on the label. It's required by law. So items that do say they're trans fat free can contain, sometimes they'll brag on the front that they're trans fat free, but they can still have 0.5 grams of them, and it'll be listed on the back that they still have some trans fats in them, even though they'll say it's trans fat free. It's not like it's 0, it's 0.5 grams. And that's in the ingredient list, it won't be on here necessarily. It'll be in this ingredient list where it says ingredients and it lists them out. And sometimes it's right next to it, sometimes you have to hunt around for it on the back. So basically, we'd recommend choosing foods that don't have trans fats in them. And if you look at when you go into the grocery store, if you're going to buy a packaged item, like for example, I don't know, crackers, there's a whole aisle of crackers. And there's all kinds that look like Triscuits, and everyone has their own version of Triscuits. Turn it over and read the label, and you'll find that from brand to brand, there's going to be a totally different group of ingredient listing. And so one of those brands might have a trans fat-free listing. And so that would be your better choice versus one that has the partially hydrogenated oils in it. So, or if that Triscuit's not a good option, then maybe go to the wheat thins and look at the wheat thins. Or find any other cracker. And just because it's a major brand does not necessarily mean that's healthier. I would read all of the labels and then decide. But then when you go to the store, you'll know exactly which one is the one that is acceptable for you to eat. And if you're going to cook or eat baked goods, make them at home from scratch or partially from scratch, or maybe you just add an egg or some water. But you can read the back of the cake mix, and it'll tell you if there's partially hydrogenated oils in them. Often there's not. And then eat real butter. But again, eat it in moderation because that's a fat. It's a healthy fat, but you only want to eat a little bit of it. And not put it on everything because, a lot of people flavor everything with butter. Try fresh seasonings, fresh herbs, dried herbs. That's a much better way to season your food, and there's a lot of health benefits, and there's no calories or fat involved.
All right. And I just want to reiterate what Ann said because I know it's kind of a confusing concept, that on your nutrition facts label on the back where it tells you how much fat is in the product you're eating, it'll say there's a line that says trans fat, and that might say 0, and it might still contain a 0.5 gram of trans fat, which doesn't sound like a lot, but the World Health Organization says the most that anybody should have in a day is 2 grams. There are very, very few foods that anybody says you shouldn't eat. Most people will say, well, there's no bad foods. This is a bad food. Not this. This is a fine food. Trans fats are a bad food. If you see partially hydrogenated oil on the ingredient list, even if it says 0 trans fats on that nutrition facts label, if you see the words partially hydrogenated in the ingredient list, you know that it has some trans fat in there. So if you're eating crackers and it says partially hydrogenated on the list, you should assume that there's a 0.5 gram of trans fat in there, which means if the serving size is, say, 5 crackers and you eat 10 or 15 crackers, that's getting you pretty close to the maximum limit that's considered safe. I would say the maximum limit is 0. I don't work for the World Health Organization, so you feel free to listen to who you want to listen to. But the point is that trans fats are one of those foods that you really should avoid if at all possible.
And it's not liquefied. I mean, that's another key, is whether something it liquefies or not, like olive oil. It's literally a block of hydrogenated mass of oil.
It started.
You can't digest it.
Your body doesn't know what to do with it. It started because everybody started worrying about cholesterol, right? In the 70s, the 80s, everyone's like, oh, cholesterol is a bad thing, saturated fat is a bad thing, and those are in animal products. So everybody was looking at the labels so that they wanted it to say vegetable oil and not lard and not beef fat. So what they did is they figured out how to make vegetable oil a solid at room temperature, which is what they needed for these shelf-stable bakery products. And so everyone thought, great, we came up with this partially hydrogenated oil, we're all saved. Well, little did we know that actually turned out to be a bigger demon than saturated fat or cholesterol. So this is what happens when we play around with traditional diets, right? We should just eat real food, eat what our grandparents ate. Like Michael Pollan says, if your grandmother or your great-grandmother, depending on how old you are, if they didn't recognize it as food, don't eat it. An apple, my grandmother knew what that was, right? If I showed her some Go-Gurt, she'd be like, is this toothpaste or hair gel? What is this? So keep that in mind, for sure.
When did Twinkies come in? We're not safe with Twinkies, right? Because they've only been around 40
60s,
years?
70.
Ooh.
So we're gonna, while the beans and greens are simmering away, Anne's gonna start on salmon salad. Yeah?
Okay.
And there's an open can here.
Yeah. I'm going to repeat the question in case anyone didn't hear it. She's asking about olive oils, that there you see all these different olive oils and what's the best. Definitely cold pressed extra virgin olive oil is the best. What cold pressed means is that it was physically extracted. So you can imagine, you squeeze something and the juice comes out. Actually, olive oil is a fruit juice, not an oil. I mean, it is an oil, it's oily, but olives are a fruit, so it's the same concept as like squeezing a lemon, right? You can envision that if you squeeze a lemon, the juice comes out. Same thing with olives. So that's what you want, is you want that cold pressed. The problem you get with oils is when you add heat and when you add chemicals. So if it says, if it's chemically extracted, it can't say cold pressed, or an extra virgin means it's the first pressing. So the first time you squeeze it, that's what comes out. And that's what you want, is that's what that extra virgin cold pressed means.
But there's also a robust olive oil. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but it's also it has a little bit more flavoring. I don't know, in terms of, and it's still put out organically by several companies. So I think that you need to test it. Sometimes it's really, extra virgin is very, very light. It kind of depends upon what you're cooking.
It also depends on the variety of olives. So there's tons of different varieties of olives. So a stronger tasting olive is going to produce a stronger tasting olive oil. Likewise, a milder tasting olive is going to produce a milder tasting olive oil. Olive oil is my go-to cooking oil whenever I make anything savory, or that the flavor of olives wouldn't disrupt the flavor of what I'm making. But sometimes you're making something and you really don't want an olive taste in your muffins or whatever it is, in which case they do have kind of refined olive oils where some of the flavor's been taken out, but that's when you start thinking, okay, how did they get the flavor out? Well, there's probably been some chemical extraction there, and that's when I would use something like sunflower oil, safflower oil, canola oil, which also, everything has its pros and cons, and we can go into that more later if people have questions. But like Candace says, it depends what you're cooking. Did I make that more confusing or less confusing? Okay, the question was, she's heard that olive oils sometimes have other oils added to it. That's really a manufacturer question. There's been a lot of debate about the honesty of the people selling olive oils. People want olive oil, they'll pay more for it, and so I guess some dishonest manufacturers might, water down the wine with something else. So they're like adding canola oil or something else to their olive oil. I can't tell you which manufacturers. I don't know anything about the manufacturing, ethics of different companies. What I can tell you is that, at least locally, I buy from the Texas Olive Ranch, which is, a local ranch. I go to the farmer's market, I talk to the farmer, he tells me about his trees, we chat about his family, Then I know it's all olive oil. I know where it's being grown, I know where it's being raised, I don't have to worry about that. For people who aren't in Central Texas, I would just say, if you have someone locally producing olive oil, that's great. Otherwise, maybe just do a little research on the brands that you like and see what you can find.
Well, I know also at like Central Market, which is basically H-E-B, you can talk to the foodie people about it, and they'll tell you, because they know their products, they'll tell you where they come from, whether they're pure, which ones are higher quality, and they do a lot of tastings. And like on Saturdays, Sundays, they do a lot of tastings, and you can taste the different ones before you buy an entire bottle that you end up not liking, and see if it's too strong for you. So that's a fun little outing anyway on the weekend.
What about, I've heard about high heat oils, that olive oil is not a high heat oil?
Right. Okay, so the question was about high heat oils, and is olive oil a high heat oil? Every oil has what's called a smoke point, which is the point at which it begins to smoke when you cook. You want to avoid getting to that smoke point, because at that point you're creating carcinogens and chemicals that you don't want. I don't think we have the time right now to talk about the different smoke points of different oils. It's true that olive oil is not a very high heat oil. there are others that are higher and others that are lower, and pros and cons to all of those.
Pecan oil, actually, which is produced in Texas, which I had the opportunity to try, expensive, but has the highest smoke point and also is full of proteins. It's wonderful. And Anne's an advocate of coconut oil,
Yeah,
which you can
coconut
also
oil's good
use in your hair.
In your body. Yeah, it's great.
yeah, nut oils are good. Peanut oil
And
is
you don't
good.
use very much of it. So, you think about what you're using and the cost of it. It's really not, per serving, it's not that, the cost isn't that high, I don't think. Because you don't use a whole lot of it. You're not using like a half a cup, you're using like a teaspoon at the most, or half a teaspoon.
Yeah, it was
or a
really
tablespoon.
It was really interesting. The second time I facilitated this class here, I started really watching how much butter I used in cooking, because I come from the dairy state and I have a Polish heritage, and it's like butter and breadcrumbs and cheese and pierogi, and so and sausage. And I started watching, just on the level, like just not adding as much. And my olive oil started lasting, month instead of like a couple of weeks. It was astounding. The same thing with butter. I was always running to get butter every 3 weeks. And now I'm lucky if a month, or I'm not lucky, but a month and a half, I still have like a couple of sticks. So you can learn to get more out of food without cooking with so much fat. It's a habit, actually.
Well, and your pans now are geared toward not necessarily needing as much fat to cook with. So
Yeah.
you just really don't need to use it. Okay, we're going to make some salmon salad. This is an easy item to keep in your pantry, and you have an instant quick lunch or a snack, or even, frankly, for that matter, dinner. And we went ahead and did most of it, but I'm going to show you how you clean it. Has anyone ever opened a can of salmon and used a can? No? First thing you want to do is you want to drain off the water. There's not a whole lot on it, but just because it would be too much liquid.
And you do want to make sure you're buying your fish canned in water instead of oil.
Yeah. Okay, now inside here, I'm going to open it up, and I don't know if you won't probably all be able to see, but there are bones, basically the vertebrae, and there's also the brown color, that's the fat. And I'm going to remove the fat, or what little bit of skin is still left on it, because that's where the mercury resides, and you don't want to be eating the mercury. So we're going to skim that off, but we're going to eat the bones because they're loaded with calcium, and they crumble just like paper. So I'm going to actually use my hands to do it, because it's the best way to get them all crumbled up. You can't really do it with a fork.
We did all wash our hands before we started cooking for you.
A couple
just
times.
to make sure you know that.
We also have to say that when we're doing our 6-week cooking class, or even our 1-hour cooking classes, we will demo the entire recipe. We'll chop everything, we'll add it, and so this is a sort of a truncated class, but we go through all of it. And then actually at the end of the classes, people get to take a bag of food home, which is the recipe, the ingredients, come back next week and tell us how they did.
The first time I cooked with salmon in a can, and I thought, this is gross, and I am not doing this again. Because you can see there's like little vertebrae, and I'm like,
Here they are, right
I'm not
here.
eating salmon backbone. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. And then I taught a class with Anne where she was using the canned salmon, and she showed me you can just really, it just
This is the
disintegrates in your
vertebrae, and
hands.
when they said calcium, I was all over it. So I thought, I'm going to eat it and just see what happens. So you just crumble it. Just crumbles to nothing. And I'm going to mix it all up in here. And we were getting prepared for this class. We added sardines into it. I know sardines are great for you. I couldn't quite get over the fact I couldn't put them in my mouth directly. I thought, well, I'm going to have to hide them. So Katie said, well, let's mix it in with the salmon. And you won't really taste it that much. So we did, and I really felt great about eating it because the omega-3s are unbelievable. It's like one of the highest ones, but I just couldn't quite get past that little fish
But
on a
we
cracker.
did also add capers, which helped.
Well, we're going to do that today, too.
And we keep throwing out omega-3s. That's one of the healthy fats that you want. And if people have questions about that later, we can talk more about it.
I think I don't know which pan's bigger.
Either one. As you wish.
I have to mix it all up. Is this? Do we have a bigger one?
Yeah.
I must have a bigger one. That maybe.
How about this guy?
Yeah. Because I'm going to get my hands in it, and I'll have a little more room to. I apologize, you all can't see very well. We don't have the mirror up behind us like they do on professional cooking shows. So this we did all ahead of time. Now, do you all have the recipe in front of you? Okay.
Can we pass out the recipes? Thanks.
Okay, the next item we're going to put in, we've pre-measured this. Okay, so again, I'm just going to get in here and just crumble up. I can feel the bones, and I'm just going to crumble them up.
And you really don't taste them, I promise you.
No, you won't even know
I
they're
was
there.
just as squeamish as I can see some of you are out there right now.
Not to be, don't worry.
But you know what? It's good to handle your food and to be familiar with it and to be, I don't know, loving in a way, because you're going to be ingesting it into your body, and that's a pretty intimate relationship.
It's just so much easier to mix with your hands. Okay, then we're going to add in, we've pre-measured everything. Stir in the mustard. The mustard's in here. Okay, so now we've got mustard and olive oil.
The olive oil and lemon are here.
Okay, so we're going to do, is the mustard in there?
No, the mustard and all your spices are in
Okay,
there.
so again, we've done all this together. It's just basically you're just going to throw everything in. We've pre-measured it. You're going to throw everything in and just mix it all up. It's just that simple. It's so easy to put together.
And this recipe is from a cookbook called The Cancer Fighting Kitchen by Rebecca Katz. And if you don't have that book, I definitely recommend it. She's developed all these recipes specifically for combating cancer, both for people who have cancer and for survivors, for people who are trying to avoid getting cancer. And the ingredients that she includes are specific cancer-fighting ingredients. So you might not normally think to put turmeric in a salmon salad or a tuna fish, but that's a really good cancer-fighting ingredient. And so you add it in here. It tastes delicious. It's really good for you. It's got a lot of cancer-fighting properties. So you don't, like I said, you don't have to be thinking you have to eat all these weird foods just to be doing what's best for your body. You can just throw it in something you might be cooking anyway.
You know, but probably you're eating more turmeric than you think, so, because it's also used as an agent to color. And I did study Ayurvedic medicine, which has a basis of turmeric is used in a lot of things. And I learned to brush my teeth with it,
Oh, yeah?
and they are sparkling white.
That's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah,
And a
and
fun
you wouldn't think
fact?
so. You think it stains it, but it doesn't.
Fun fact about turmeric, is if you ingest it into your veins, it's lethal. But if you eat it, it's just fine. So don't inject it into your veins.
Okay, and we put capers in it, which if you don't like capers for some reason, although they're really quite flavorful, if you don't like them, you don't have to put them in, but they really add a nice flavor. Now you could mound all of this salmon salad on some lettuce greens, or you could put it in a pita or a tortilla. It's a great lunch, and there's nothing in here that's going to spoil, and it's very satisfying. Again, you're getting your protein.
One of the things I like about this recipe also is, I want to eat a lot of salmon. I know it's good for me, but I don't like to, I'm not going to buy fresh salmon on a Monday and then, not be able to cook it till Wednesday or Thursday because fresh fish is going to go bad. So this I can keep in my pantry, and then on a night where I don't know what to make for dinner, I've got canned salmon. This is all, pantry staples. That's easy. It's quick. I feel good about eating it.
And it's very inexpensive, and if possible, and you can buy the cans that are wild-caught salmon. I would recommend that. It's not that much more expensive. And for that whole can, it's really very economical.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about digestion. Anne touched on that earlier. The point is that if you can't digest something, you're not going to get the nutrients from it. And so that's why digestion is important. It helps with blood sugar control. It also helps with detoxification. So if you want to get toxins out of your body, the digestion process is really important for that. So there's a couple different ways that you can improve digestion in your body and also make the foods that you eat more digestible. So for example, one of the things you can do, like we were talking about smoothies, you can blend up the food that you're eating. That increases the surface area, which makes your body, makes it easier for your body to assimilate those nutrients. So one of the recipes that we're going to talk about tonight is gazpacho. I made it ahead of time. We thought having a blender running in the middle of class maybe wouldn't be really helpful for y'all. This is what it looks like. The rest of it is in the fridge for the people here to get to taste. But basically, you throw a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables into a blender and you blend it up. It's very, very easy. You don't have to, do a lot of fine chopping because it's all getting blended up anyway. You've got some garlic and some red wine vinegar and some olive oil, which gets a lot of flavor in there with your tomatoes and your cucumbers. It's delicious. It's easy to digest. It's nothing but fruits and vegetables. No fruits, nothing but vegetables. So you have a cup of gazpacho. That's 2 servings of vegetables in your day right there. So blending up your foods or chopping up really small. It's the same concept as when we were talking about whole grains versus refined grains. And one of the reasons you want whole grains is because when you grind grains into flour, they digest too quickly, right? That's one of the reasons that a whole grain is better than a flour, certainly a refined flour. It's sort of the same idea in reverse, right? Sometimes you want something to be easier to digest and sometimes you don't. So hopefully that all makes sense. One thing you can do is you can take smaller bites and chew your food very carefully. A lot of us rush through our day and just sort of gulp back food, you know, in the car here and there. But the digestion process starts in your mouth. And so the more you can chew your food, the easier it's going to be for your body to digest it. So that's one tip. And aside from the whole, you know, relaxing and chewing your food, the more stressed out you are when you eat, the harder it's going to be for your body to digest. So you want to sit down at a table without your phone, without the TV on, and try your best to relax and eat. And no, a desk does not count as a table. So, you know, take 10 minutes, even if you're having a busy day. Sit down. Don't eat standing at the counter. Don't eat in the car. Don't eat on the couch in front of the TV. Try to relax, excuse me, while you're eating. Another thing that helps with digestion is good bacteria. You may have heard of probiotics or prebiotics. You can certainly take those in supplements if you want to, but there's also foods that contain them naturally. So foods like sauerkraut and yogurt, sourdough breads, things that are fermented, contain those good bacteria naturally. And so if you eat a little bit of yogurt with your meals or a little bit of sauerkraut, maybe you've heard of kombucha, which is a drink that's fermented. Those have probiotics in them, good bacteria. And also season your food. Like we talked about, turmeric is a digestive aid, garlic, all these different flavorings in your food. Not only do they make your food taste better, but they make them more digestible. And you find that a lot in traditional cooking. You know, it turns out that you get more nutrients from your tomatoes when you cook them with olive oil and basil. Well, hey, there's traditional marinara sauce. So there's some reason out there why traditional foods are the way they are. And a lot of that is to improve digestibility. And there's also some cooking methods that help with digestibility. So when you marinate your meat, that makes it more digestible. So aside from making it more delicious, somehow the combination of acid and salt breaks down the proteins and makes the meat more digestible. So if you don't have time to marinate it, squeeze a little lemon juice and some salt over your meat as early as you can before you start cooking it, and that will help. And also long, slow cooking, like braising. You know, instead of just really quick pan frying your meat, you can buy a cheaper cut of meat, still high quality meat, but a cheaper cut, and cook it for a few hours in liquid in your oven. And that's going to break down those fibers and make them more easier to digest. And also when you're cooking grains, a lot of people have a hard time digesting grains. You can soak your grains before you eat them, the way that you soak beans before you cook them, and that helps with the process. So you still want to cook your grains, but soak them ahead of time. It also takes less time to cook them. So when I make steel-cut oats, for example, I don't have 45 minutes to wait for my oatmeal to cook in the morning. I'm getting my kids out the door. I'm going to work, you know, trying my best to sit down at a table, right, and eat. I don't have 45 minutes. So if I put my oatmeal in the pot the night before, turn it on, as soon as it comes to a boil, I turn it back off, put the lid on, go to sleep, forget about it. The next morning, all I have to do is heat it up. It's already cooked, and it's soaked, and it's soft. Takes less time, improves the digestibility. You can't do that same exact process with all grains, but you can soak all grains. And because grains are seeds, you can even soak them to the point that they sprout, which improves their nutrition. Sprouting grains is a slightly different process than soaking. If anyone's interested in that, we can talk about it later with question and answer. But that's another way to improve the digestibility of grains, is to sprout them. So those are some tips about digestion. Like I said, the gazpacho that we're going to have tonight is kind of our example of one of the ways that you can make your food more digestible. And now I believe we're moving on to sweet potato wraps, yes?
Yes.
Can you guys smell the beans and greens cooking here? So yeah, the greens are getting nice and soft in there.
We're going to go ahead and mix up the salad dressing here.
Sure.
I guess we're going to put that in this out the wrap, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the sweet potatoes we cooked in the oven yesterday, I guess for about an hour.
Yeah, 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think, did you cut them up? And
No, I baked them whole at about 400, and then they were done, and I was just able to peel them, you know, just with my hands instead of scooping them out. Sometimes you can cut them and scoop them out. This was easier.
Okay, so the recipe, you'll be getting this recipe, but rather than doing it in the microwave, we did it in the oven because, first of all, I think it has a better flavor. I'm not a big advocate of the microwave. So basically what we're going to have is we have the whole wheat tortillas, and these are actually sprouted whole wheat grain tortillas, whole grain wheat tortillas. I think you can get these at H-E-B.
I got these at Wheatsville, but you can get them at H-E-B.
This Margarita's brand is a really good brand. And then we're going to do the sweet potatoes, raisins, the mixed greens, we've already pre-washed them in vinegar water. We're going to mix some balsamic and olive oil in these mixed greens. Then some cranberries, although I guess we're using raisins instead of cranberries. You can use any dried fruit. If you like cranberries, you could do cranberries. Raisins are good too. And then we're just going to roll them up in the tortilla. So I'm going to show you how to do it, and then we're going to continue making them so we have some to eat.
Let me see.
And then we also have the queso fresco. And if you all are watching your cheese intake, which I am, because I love cheese, but it's a lot of fat in your diet, as much as I ate, you can substitute nuts for those. And that gives you a little bit more flavor, but you don't have all the cheese and the high fat of it. And you don't need as many nuts as you do the cheese.
And nuts are good fats.
Yes.
So. And this is just as easy as making, if you want to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because you just want something easy, this is just as easy. And you can make it with whatever you have at home. If you don't have these kind of greens, you've got sprouts, you've got shredded carrots. Feel free to, mix and match however you see fit.
And it's really satisfying. And this is actually the recipe that we've chosen for nutrient density. So nutrient density is not really totally featured in your hand. You won't have a handout in it except it's mentioned on the front page for of the 4 categories. And that actually means you're eating foods that with nuts and an avocado that pack a lot of punch in terms of fiber, in terms of minerals, in terms of vitamins, and they're not empty calories. Something like Cheetos, empty calories. It's not something you can that will sustain your body for long. It might taste great the first handful, and after that you realize I don't really feel. You might not feel really quite as good. But if you eat a handful of fresh almonds and cranberries or some mix that you can create, your body sometimes will say thank you, and you'll realize that you're eating again real foods. So nutrient density, again, it's on the front page. What is it? It's the amount of nutrients like fibers, vitamins, and minerals in a given portion of food. And why is it important? Because whole foods like apples, spinach, and beans are better than low nutrient foods like sports drinks, like white bread, like pretzels, which we all tend to gravitate to when we're really, really hungry. But if you have a bowl of nuts or raisins mixed together, a banana even, an apple, or making, one of the things that we teach in our class is you make the recipe once, like this sweet potato wrap makes for about 12 people, but or 12 servings or so, but you can cook once and then eat twice. Meaning you can either eat it the next day or freeze it and bring it out, within a couple of days. And that's a way that it can also save time. Because we realize that people are busy. And again, Katie mentioned some of the foods that are okay to buy. There's organic applesauces. Brown rice usually takes a long time, but quinoa, and we're going to be serving that with the greens and beans. Have any of you used the grain quinoa? It also looks like quinoa. It's easy to mispronounce, and actually is a Peruvian grain. Very easy and pretty foolproof. I'll make that sometimes instead of brown rice, because brown rice sometimes takes 45 minutes. Pasta, a little bit of an empty calorie going on, even though it's lovely. But you can also try spaghetti squash. Does anybody cook with spaghetti squash? It's pretty lovely. So Ann, how are you putting them together?
Okay. So since you all don't have the recipe and you get home and when you do go to look at it, I'm going to go off script a little bit because I know what's going to happen. If I put, the recipe says to put the cheese and the raisins into the salad mixing, well, you know what's going to happen. All that raisins are going to fall to the bottom, and I'll be scrambling around to get them down. So I'm going to put them into the sweet potatoes. That way it's all kind of part of the mix. Because I'm not sure, and I'll just sprinkle maybe the cheese on top, a little bit on top, but I think it'll work out better that way.
And you see that these are mashed, and it does take a while to mash the sweet potatoes, as lovely as they are. You can also just cut them into like pickle spears, you know, that size, and you can also use the wraps in that way. So if you don't have the time and the patience to mash them all, although you can meditate while you're doing it, it's easier to sometimes just cut them into pickle spears.
Does sweet potato have a different density than a regular russet potato? It seems like there's a lot of recipes with sweet potato.
That's a good question.
It does have a slightly different feel to it when you mash a sweet potato. I'm not sure how to describe it. It sticks together a little bit better, whereas I don't know. It's sort of hard to. You kind of just have to do it and see. Like if you think of a baked potato, it's sort of fluffy, whereas a sweet potato is denser, but it also has a lot more nutrition. You can tell just by the color, right? The rich, deep orange color of a sweet potato tells you what's in it. So when you're eating all your fruits and vegetables, you want to be eating your whole rainbow of colors. So one of the reasons that we pick sweet potatoes isn't just for the flavor, but also because you know that it's very nutrient dense because of that bright orange color. So if I'm having sweet potatoes, and let's say I'm using, you know, my raisins, which, you know, think about it, those are red grapes, right, that are dried. So that's my red family of fruits and vegetables. We've got our greens. So we've got a whole rainbow right here just in this one dish. And you really want to think about that as you put your meals together. You know, get in your blues and purples, blueberries, eggplant, all the different colors, and even your whites. A lot of people say don't eat white food, but onions, leeks, mushrooms, garlic, those are all really good for you too. Cauliflower. So, you know, as you're eating your rainbow, don't forget about the whites.
The other thing too, you know, we talked about blood sugar. Russet potatoes have a higher glycemic index than sweet potatoes. So that's another benefit, is it's a lot lower glycemic index.
And also as you begin to cook, and you cook with more fresh and whole foods, you'll notice that even though it could be a favorite at Thanksgiving to add marshmallows and brown sugar to sweet potatoes, you don't really need to. When you cook them, you can see how they caramelize, and there is a natural sugar element in them. And you can learn to love them without all of the marshmallows and stuff. This is lovely.
You can add cinnamon and pecans to your sweet potatoes, and the cinnamon gives it that sort of sweet flavor, and the pecans are the crunchy, you know, instead of the brown sugar on top. That's good. We had a question. Yeah.
What about the skins?
The skins? We did not put the skins in here, but
You could.
A lot of nutrients.
yeah. Typically for most fruits and vegetables, the bulk of the nutrients are in the skins, and also that's a lot of fiber, and that's good. So yeah, eat the skins.
And you could have mashed them in with them.
Yeah, I would encourage it.
Yeah,
I mean, I ended up eating a lot of the skins. It's delightful. But you know, you do have to watch that you chop them fine, or because you're not going to be able to mash them actually in the same way. But if you do that pickle spear idea of cutting them, you know, into fourths or sixths, you'll be able to leave the skin on, and it will add more fiber to the meal. Good idea.
So basically, I just took this mixture of the sweet potatoes, the cheese, the raisins, and I put a couple tablespoons in here, and I just put some of the mixed greens in that have the olive oil, the lemon juice, and balsamic vinegar, and that's it.
Can I take one?
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about nutrient density while Ann keeps making the sweet potato wraps. So this is the part of the class where you're like, are those really Doritos that she just brought up here? What? So here we have one of the meals that we talked about with on that day of meal handout that I showed y'all. So here we have one of the meals from that handout. So we have a sweet potato wrap, we have a cup of broccoli, and some applesauce. So I feel like that looks like a pretty good meal. I'm pretty excited about eating that for dinner. And that meal has just shy of 650 calories. And it's incredibly nutrient dense, right? We've got all the different colors, tons of fruits and vegetables. Most of that plate is fruits and vegetables. Even though it's a vegetarian meal, it's got about 13 grams of protein. It's got about 3/4 of the fiber you need in a day. So that is a nutrient-dense meal. So for that number of calories, what else could you get for that number of calories, right? You could get 52 Doritos. So this has the same number of calories as that. You think that's going to fill you up the same way? You know, could you eat, how many, you think you could eat those Doritos while watching a half-hour TV show without even thinking about it, right? It's an entire meal's worth of calories. Another thing that has the same number of calories, let's say you're rushing to work, you meant to soak your oats last night, you forgot, you're going to go to Starbucks, but you're not going to get any of the bad stuff, right? You're only going to get the good stuff at Starbucks. So you're going to get the reduced fat berry cake, right? They went to that class, they said berries were good for me, right? So I'm going to get the berry, I'm not going to get the chocolate chip. It's reduced fat, right? That's got to be better for me, right? I'm going to get that. Not going to get the frappa, mocha, whatnot. I'm going to get the green tea latte, and I'm going to get skim milk, right? The reduced fat berry coffee cake and the skim milk green tea latte, same number of calories. It's about 650 calories, and the like better choice, right? And this much sugar. It's 22 teaspoons of sugar in just those two items. So this is not what you want, right? This is not a good choice. If you're thinking back, balancing blood sugar, this is what you want. This is the good choice. So that's what we mean when we say nutrient density. Does that make sense for everybody? All right, we have a few minutes. Is there anything left that we have left out here?
No, we've actually, we're going to plate up the food in a little bit. But I guess if anybody has any questions, we can do a little Q&A. Oh, all right.
Okay.
I'm just going to make this one thing of tortillas and that's it, or more?
Actually, there's 8 in there. I put 2 into one bag.
Oh, so I'm going to make all of these?
Hello.
So this was relevant because you guys were just talking about sugars, and you laid out that lovely sugar. I apologize. I'll look at you guys. So online, they ask questions about sugar substitutes. So like stevia or any of these agave nectar or any of these things that you can kind of substitute for sugar. How kind of safe are they? Should they be used?
That's a great question. A lot of times people will say, oh, it's fine. It's Mexican Coke. It's the real cane sugar. It's not that high fructose corn syrup. So the truth of the matter is, chemically there's really no difference. There's a very small difference between high fructose corn syrup and table sugar. Sugar, I could spend the entire 90 minutes talking about sugar, so I'm trying to figure out how to bring this all down. Basically, if you want something sweet, the best choice obviously is fruit, right? If you're like, yeah, that's not what I mean. I mean I want something sweet. Then the next best choice is honey or grade B maple syrup. Both of those are very natural sweeteners. All sweeteners are going to affect your blood sugar, right? They're all going to make your blood sugar go up. So whether it's honey or maple syrup or sugar or corn syrup or agave nectar, they all will affect your blood sugar. It is true that honey and maple syrup have a little bit more nutritive value. My feeling about that is that if you're looking to your dessert for nutritive value, you have bigger changes that you need to make. If the question is about calorie-free sweeteners, so stevia has gotten a lot of attention lately. You'll see it often as, it'll say REB, period A, Rebiana A, which is what they've extracted from the stevia plant. That's the sweet part of the stevia plant. So far, no one's done any studies to show that it's not safe. That was once true of saccharin, that was once true of aspartame, so I take that with a grain of salt. My feeling is I would rather eat a little bit of honey or maple syrup than a lot of an artificial sweetener that has not fully been tested. That being said, I can't tell you whether or not they'll ever find anything wrong with it. Artificial sweeteners, I would suggest that you don't drink unless your doctor has told you to for some reason.
Great.
So.
Another question kind of along the same lines, some people look to protein shakes, V8, Juice Plus, some of these sort of other things to supplement their diet if they're having some nutritional deficiencies. How do you feel about using those versus making your own smoothies, or do you have any suggestions?
So I'm going to give suggestions assuming that you're not right in the midst of chemotherapy, that, you know, there are times when you can't eat anything and you just need to get calories because you need to live, and that is a different situation. So that's not the situation I'm talking about right now. What I'm talking about is you've made it through treatment, you're having a good day, so keeping that in mind. Typically, I would say eat real food. So protein powders are not real food. I think it's better to get your protein from real food sources. That being said, sometimes you need to up your protein intake, and that's the only way that you can do it. And sometimes that's fine, and use a very high quality protein, and, you know, do it the best way you can. Put it in a smoothie that has a lot of fruit and maybe some yogurt and other good things. Use it as a vehicle for some of the other good foods you know you're supposed to be eating. But typically, I would say go with real food. Do you feel like that answered the question?
And then along those same lines, some people were saying buying organic foods versus non-organic. Sometimes the organic stuff can be a little expensive. So any suggestions you have or thoughts on that?
Sure. And Candace and Ann, y'all feel free to jump in as you want to. So if money is not an issue, great, buy all organic. If that's not the case, in order of importance, I would say meat and dairy are two of the big things to buy organic. In the produce aisle, you may have seen lists, the Dirty Dozen, and you get to the store and you think, oh, I know I read about this one. Was that on the good list or the bad list? So here's a little trick for you. If you eat the peel, it's more important to buy organic. So peaches, strawberries, celery, things that you're eating the outside of, buy organic. If you don't eat the outside, onions, avocados, melons, bananas. I'm sorry, what did you say? I didn't hear what you said.
Bananas.
Bananas, yeah. So things that you take the outside peel off of, less important to buy organic.
And then if I could ask one more. We had specifically some breast cancer survivors. Some of their cancers are hormone receptive, and so they were obviously concerned about meats and also soy because they can have some hormonal properties. Do you guys have any comments on that?
Yes, well, so if you're buying organic, local meat, I mean, you can't guarantee that local is always going to be organic, but if it's a small family farm ranch, you can talk to the farmer. In those cases, you just want to make sure that they don't give any hormones, antibiotics, that kind of thing to the animals. As far as soy goes, that's kind of been all over the map. Like today, what people seem to think is that soy's fine, even for positive breast cancer or estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. The studies that were done that showed that it was bad or questions, I don't necessarily need to go into all of that. You know, the upshot is it's fine to eat soy, but eat traditional forms of soy. So don't eat, you know, the bar with the soy lecithin and the, you know, fake whatnot. Eat tofu, tempeh, edamame, traditional whole forms of soy that have been around for years. Rather than processed, you know, chicken nuggets that are actually soy, because they're not any better than the regular chicken nuggets.
There turns out to be some flaws in the original studies in regard to soy products, and that would be the use of rats. And the humans and rats don't metabolize soy in the same way is one of the factors. And also they looked at the Asian cultures and the lack of cancer there, which is basically soy-based. But it's, again, a pure form of soy, you know, not highly processed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. So we're going to start plating up the food for the people who are here. If you guys have questions, we have about 15 more minutes, so we can definitely take lots of questions if anyone has them.
You know, another thing is when you're going through treatment, it's hard sometimes to switch gears all of a sudden. I mean, it's difficult. And so know that you can start this at any time in your life, any stage in your life, just eating whole, eating real foods, and you're going to notice a difference. You're also going to, it's also just fun to go to a farmer's market and to also to look at the beautiful, we use one of the, do a class on Eat Your Rainbow, and that would be eating things that are, I'm thinking of eggplants, and which are purple. In the purple, you know, some nightshades. There's also tomatoes, apples, green grapes, spinach, you know, and it's just, now we have such, again, in Texas, we're very, very blessed to have a great growing season. And if you do go to farmers markets, you'll find that, you know, that the recipes out of the Sustainable Food Center offers in their cookbooks were made for farmers who came and said, listen, we're bringing in kales, we're bringing in some spring onions, and people aren't really sure what these are, and even how to cook different types of sweet potatoes, different types of potatoes. You'll go and you'll see little purple fingerling potatoes, really, you know, just a rainbow. And the farmers are also very willing to tell you how to cook them. But with the Sustainable Food Center's cookbook, you'll learn a lot about eating whole foods that are local.
I bought beets like already cut up in a can and everything, and then yesterday I bought like real beets. I have no idea what to do with them.
Okay. So if you've only ever had beets in a can, this will be like a revelation for you, because beets in a can are not all that, you know. Real beets are fantastic. How do you like? Do you want them like hot? You can. Okay, I'll give you a few options.
It seems hard on the outside.
It is. So beets are
yeah.
hard. You need to cook them for a while. You can either you want to cut off the greens and then eat them in a different dish, and you want to cut off the tail. You know, it's got that little tail, and then you can either boil them whole until they're soft enough that a knife sticks in, and at that point let them cool, and then the skins will just fall right off, and then you can slice them and marinate them. You could puree it into a soup like borscht, but you could also roast them. So instead of boiling them, same thing, cut off the greens and the tails, wrap them up in foil, and roast them in the oven at about 400, 425, depending on the size of the beet, anywhere from like 20 minutes to an hour. Same thing until a knife goes in.
Do you like to grill? Okay, because one of the things that I do before it gets too hot is to actually cut the greens off. You get them at the farmer's market, and then I wash the beets, split them in half, and put them on the grill. And they're roasted, and they're just wonderful.
I bought it without the greens on because
That's
I didn't know
okay.
what to do with the greens.
You can cook the greens any way you'd cook any other green spinach. Saute
Right.
them with garlic and olive oil. One more option for beets, and then I see your question. You can also peel them with a vegetable peeler and grate them with carrots and put some orange juice and lemon juice and maybe a little olive oil and salt and pepper and eat them like a salad. And that recipe is actually in our in the Happy Kitchen cookbook, which I brought a few of them if anybody wants to take a look. And then for the people online, you can go to sustainablefoodcenter.org, and the cookbook's online there.
And if you have a juicer, they're great in a juicer.
I was going to throw them in the juicer.
Yeah, and with carrots, a little bit of, my favorite recipe is organic carrots, some maybe 1.5 beets, ginger, a thumbful of ginger, and lime, and a whole lime.
And there was
Throw the whole line in.
Yeah, well, cut it in half, but yes, I use the rind and everything. Yep.
Well, I like that in margaritas. So.
Then
and
you'll like
we had a
this.
question here in the strip church.
So there's a question online asking about fatigue, any foods that could specifically fight fatigue or help with fatigue during cancer.
That's a great question, and I don't have an answer. Do you guys have an answer
Yeah,
for that
just
one?
what we were talking about, whole foods. Things that are as close to nature as you can get. Applesauce is really wonderful. Juices are really beautiful. All sorts of steel-cut oats and grains in the morning with some fresh fruit is wonderful. So again, just, you know, fatigue also is a result of cellular inflammation and slow digestion. All of the 4 principles that we were talking about. And this is a solution. What are the solutions? No trans fats, using less oils to cook with, eating nuts and vegetables, and things as close to as Mother Nature made them.
And again, we showed you the Happy Plate. There's this portion of protein on every, it's not a very big portion, but protein with every meal is going to make a big difference also.
And just one more thought on that. In the cookbook that I mentioned before, The Cancer Fighting Kitchen, she has a section in there specifically for different, you know, if you're feeling tired or if you're feeling nauseous or if you're not hungry and you need to eat different foods that will help with those different symptoms. So you can look in there as well.
It's an excellent book. Rebecca Katz is the author.
Any more? Yeah.
You talked about washing your greens in vinegar. So that's what you use to when you
I'll let Ann talk about that because you're the vinegar queen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Washing your greens in vinegar. You know, you go to the grocery store and they've got little bottles of wash your greens kind of stuff, and I don't really know always what's in it, but vinegar is cheap. It's antibacterial. You can use it to clean your house. You can ingest it. So if you can eat it, I'm okay with washing my greens. Plain old water doesn't do it for me. I don't think that's cleaning your greens. And also when you get them already in these pre-washed, you know, like your greens are in a pre-washed bag, I still wash them because there's a lot of contamination getting them into that bag. So I just took, because I had so many greens to wash, I just filled up my kitchen sink with water. And because it's so cheap, I can buy a great big container this tall from Costco for $3.29. I don't worry about if it's a third, a fifth, whatever. I just put a whole bunch in there and water, and I just wash them around. Then I put them in a colander, clean off with the clear water, because otherwise everything will taste like vinegar. But I scrub them a little bit, kind of rub on them, and then I just spin them in a salad spinner. And I do that with everything, my vegetables, everything. And whether they're organic or not, you still need to wash them. And if you're like cutting an avocado, you need to wash the outside before you cut into it, because anything that's on the outside of that avocado is going to go into the meat of the avocado. So you're contaminating, because everyone's touched them at the store. You don't know how many people have touched it before you get it home. So all the contamination, and just vinegar water, it's very cheap.
And I think, well, we had a question back here and you never got to ask it, so I was going to.
What are your feelings about some of the prepared foods in, say, Whole Foods or Central Market in their cases?
Right. The question is, what do we think about the prepared foods at grocery stores? I think it depends on the store. I would just ask questions. Some grocery stores will have a list of all the ingredients, so read those ingredient lists like you would any other food ingredient list and see what's in it. The main thing to watch out for is sodium. A lot of times, treat it like a restaurant food. So just ask questions, see what's in it. If it sounds like it's okay, those are all foods I've heard of, and vegetables and olive oil and whatever, then that's fine.
Where the plates at?
Just ask questions.
Oh, she got them all.
Yep.
During chemo, I have heard that when you cook all vegetables, not eat raw vegetables, and that even applesauce, fruit sugars like that need to be avoided because the tumors will eat the sugar and you don't want to feed them anything. Do you have any specific advice for cooking during the chemotherapy process?
You know what? I would say it depends on your specific kind of cancer, and I would talk to your doctor about that. There is a lot out there about sugars feeding cancer, but I don't know that we have the time and space to talk through that right now. If you want to come up and talk to me afterwards, but I also think that depending on a million different factors and how aggressive your tumor is and where it is and all of that, I would talk to your doctor. Yeah.
I know you have kids, so what do you do for their lunches? What would you pack?
Well, the question is, what do I pack for my kids' lunches? And the answer is I make my kids pack their own lunches because I think it's important for them to learn how to cook. So they're 11 and 13, and my goal is that by the time they leave my house, they will know how to cook everything they need to cook. And basically, they know that a lunch consists of some protein, at least one fruit or vegetable, no sugar, right? We don't have candy bars and we don't have fruited yogurts and stuff like that. And it can be something as easy as, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a banana, which they can make, if they're running late and forgot to make something the night before. A lot of times it's leftovers from dinner.
It's what we're cooking right now. You could eat all this for lunch.
Yeah. So I hope that was probably not the answer you wanted. Did you want specific examples? Actually, if you're interested, come up and see me afterwards. I have a whole document what to pack for lunch. It's like 6 or 8 pages of, you know, here's lots of suggestions of things you can pack for lunch and wraps and things you can put in a thermos, you know, hot, and by the time you get to lunchtime, they'll be delicious. And so we can talk more about that afterwards. I know we just have about 5 more minutes for the online folks, so if there's any other online questions, we can take those, and then the live questions we can take after.
Can you leave room on the plate for me for the wraps? The wraps. I need room on the plate.
Okay, so we had a couple of other questions about, someone asked specifically about whole wheat versus multigrain, and kind of what they should be buying, especially this person asked specifically about pasta, but I think it also applies to other bread purchases as well.
Okay. So the question is the difference between whole wheat and multigrain, and what's the thought on that? All multigrain means is that there's more than one grain in there. So that could be white rice and white flour mixed up together to make a bread. So read your label and see what those grains are. The first ingredient, so whether this is bread or pasta or anything else, the first ingredient should be whole something, whole wheat, whole oats, whole corn. That's the main thing you want. That means that the bran and the germ are intact. If it just says wheat flour, that just means it's from the wheat plant. It needs to say whole wheat flour. That's how you know that it's a whole grain.
And then if you had any suggestions for individuals who are thyroid cancer survivors and specifically need low iodine in their diets.
If you Google low iodine diets, there's a lot of information available online for that, and I'm trying to think what some of them are right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big one is iodized salt, so you would need to be careful. You know, you can certainly in your home you can buy salt that isn't iodized, but when you go out to eat, it's pretty ubiquitous. That's what they're using to make baked goods or almost anything. So I would just ask a lot of questions if you're going out. Other than that, I think Anne's right. Probably the best thing to do is to get a list from your doctor or look online for a list of foods that are low in iodine. I don't have any specific suggestions.
I just passed one of the monitors back there, and she asked, someone had asked about gluten-free foods.
Was it a specific question about whether or not to?
About just addressing how if you're on a gluten-free diet, is that the question? About if you're on a gluten-free.
So what to eat if you're already on a gluten-free diet? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, so gluten is in wheat, rye, and barley, and that's it. Often you'll read that it's in oats as well, but that's really because of cross-contamination. So when you're buying gluten-free oats, it just means that it's processed in a facility where there can't be any cross-contamination. So it depends on your level of sensitivity to gluten. If you're celiac and you really can't have any gluten, avoid oats as well. So that being said, that it's only in those 3 foods, those are everywhere. So grains that you can eat quinoa, you can eat rice, you can eat potatoes, which is not a grain, but it's starchy. You can eat kasha or buckwheat, which is actually a seed that's related to rhubarb. It's a pretty complicated question because, you know, it's in lots of different foods. I would say there are resources out there for people who are gluten-free, and it might be better to start there. And then if you have a specific question, you can email it in, and I'll try to answer it more comprehensively through email.
Just wanted to ask how everybody's doing. Are you enjoying the food?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I guess that's our time. I want to thank you guys for coming and listening and attending online, and I hope you got something out of this and that it was helpful. And thank you very much. We've had a really good time.
Thanks, everybody.
A round of applause to our facilitators. We wanted to just take another moment to remind those attending in person that we do have a survey for you to fill out, as well as those attending online. We want to be able to offer the best classes and topics that you're interested in, so all of that feedback is really important for us. Our facilitators also want to know how you enjoyed their class as well. Again, if you do have any questions that did not get answered, they will be staying here for a little bit for those attending in person, but online, feel free to email us at cancer.navigation@livestrong.org. And again, thank you so much for joining us this evening.